welcome to our vloggers, the advocacy royalty. I'm going to come back to Zoella in a second. Interestingly, though, she has almost 8 million subscribers on her YouTube following, so it is worth having a few words about her in a moment. But before we get on to Zoella, I'd like to introduce my fellow panelists. Firstly, Samantha Maria, who launched Beautycrush in 2009 when you were studying fashion, and you currently today have 1.5 million followers. And I'm reliably informed that you like street style, travel, photography, food, coffee, and dogs. Yep. So we'll ask you about the dogs in a moment. And then just along the sofa, we have Chapman. Jim actually is a very popular YouTuber, and my niece said to me on hearing about this session, "Oh my God, ask him about the hashtag baking thing. It's fantastic." And make sure that he does more of them. So we're going to ask you to do more of those. But Jim has over 2 million subscribers on his channel and attracts over 4 million views a month. And then on from there, we have Joy from SB TV. Joy is actually responsible for all of the brand partnerships and recently joined, having worked with brands like Virgin Media, Vodafone, Coca-Cola. And what SB does is create media partnerships with talent. So it'll be interesting to get your views. And then at the end, we have Tom Thirlwall, who is CEO of BigBalls Films, which is just a great name, right? BigBall Films. And I guess the claim to fame for BigBalls, though, is the Copper 90 site, which is the largest independent football site in Europe.
In the world now, actually.
In the world now. Okay, sorry, that's happened since the last time we met. So it was Europe last time we met. So to kick off our questions, and I'll throw this one open, actually, I think, to our two vloggers, if I may. We just saw a clip at the end there of Zoella showing things from her handbag. It's a pretty typical format in the category. I think she actually mentioned something like 14 or 15 products in that one vlog. So it would be kind of interesting to know from you guys just how do people respond to that? Does it matter, basically, to consumers? There's so many things in there. Do people actually respond to the products that you guys talk about?
Yes, they definitely do. I feel like Zoe, after that video, will have so many tweets and Instagrams and people going, "Look what I bought." You know, there's a toss-up between two lipsticks or lip glosses and they weren't sure which one to go for. They'll take Zoe's recommendation. You know, she's got a massive following of people who genuinely care about what she has to say. So I'll be surprised if there's any toffee crisps left in the shops at the moment. It really does have a big impact.
Yeah, because people value her opinion so much and relate to her a lot as well. And I think that a lot of people would test out from new brands that if she mentions a brand that they've never heard of, then they'll go and check it out and maybe make a purchase themselves. And that's what I did as well, like beginning in YouTube. So
right.
Yeah.
And it would be interesting to know, Sammy, so from your own experience then, you know, when you're looking at things or choosing things, how do you go about doing that, and what makes the difference for you?
From watching other YouTubers. I think if I don't know, if I love how it looks on them, or if I think it will look good on me, or if they've explained the product, what they love about it, or what they didn't like about it, and then if I thought, oh, well, that might work for me, I'll just go out there. Or if I'm not sure, when I'm shopping, I'll go to the counter, test it out. And when you're out and about, you see things that people have mentioned, and you just remember that, and you're like, oh, I want to go and check that out, and it just sticks in your mind.
And on Beautycrush, I mean, clearly fashion's one of your passions, and so you've got lots of amazing styles, and every week there's something new there. How do you decide, though, what you're going to show and which brands you work with?
Well, I always just work with brands or show brands that I love, and I would never wear something that I feel really uncomfortable in, because I think people can notice that straight away as well, because you start carrying yourself in a weird way. And I guess I just try and stay up to date with what's current as well. So kind of following trends, but not totally, because if I'm not totally comfortable with a trend, then I won't show it, wear it.
And Jim, how about you?
So for my content, I kind of will include anything I want to. If I want to talk about something and it makes sense to me, then I will do. For branded content, when they get involved, it's also a little bit different. But again, I turn down 90% of what comes through the door. If it's not something I feel comfortable talking about, or not something I want to talk about, then I just won't. You know, it's much more important for me to keep my integrity than it is to talk about a brand just because they want me to and waste some money in my face. Because I think in the long run, what we have with our audience, the reason Zoe's so successful and the reason all us guys are is because our audience would much rather listen to us and hear our opinion on things because they trust us, as opposed to see an advert on TV and just go, oh, okay, Cheryl Coles wears that. She got paid a fortune to wear it. You know, like with us, there's a real kind of connection there, you know? Yeah. So I think it has to be something I want to talk about and something that gives me some content, you know?
And have you ever done a vlog where afterwards you thought, actually, I wish I hadn't posted that one. I'm not so sure about that one now.
Well, I think pretty much all of them. I look back at my videos from 6 months ago and I go, what an idiot, why did I do that? But I think I've grown so much. If you go back to my channel in the early days, I looked like a child and I'm talking nonsense. And I'm sure in 6 months' time I look at the videos I'm making now and just go, oh. But it's kind of part of the learning curve. And I think the beauty is my audience have grown up with me. They've been there from the beginning, a lot of them. And they've seen me kind of grow into who I am. And they've kind of followed me along my journey. So I'm very much still the nerd in the bedroom. I just now happen to kind of wear cool clothes and get featured in magazines and have 2 million people who watch, but I still have that intimate connection with the people who watch.
And Tom, perhaps I could ask you, is there a point where, you know, because the advocacy is so strong, that perhaps it appears commercial, even though perhaps it isn't as directly commercial as perhaps it appears?
I think you're always walking that line. I mean, we've done a lot of work with brands like HTC and Hyundai and Adidas, and there's been moments, particularly at our kind of beginning stages of taking in brand money, whereby you did feel that the brand's desire to get sort of core messages about product functionality in terms of HTC were overriding what the hell the episode was supposed to be about. But as Jim said, the sort of integrity and our audience and our fan base is the thing that we've got to protect the most. So it became a very quick and easy conversation with a very sensible, as it was then, sponsorship director at HTC, who said, I can see the comments, I can see that, you know, the views weren't as good as the previous episode, and it's like, just let us go now, and this will build and build nicely. And so and it did, and so it's working with brands who are going to allow you that kind of freedom to say no, that freedom to say that is just going to clang as soon as that's mentioned or as soon as you go down that route. And as long as brands are in it for the long term, and that's the big thing for us, is trying to encourage brands to come into Copper90 for multiple years, because there's not an instant. You know, we're not like with Zoella. You know, she's got such a huge 8 million engaged fan base that are hanging off her every word. You know, she drops, you've got to buy Rimmel, or this is what I'm wearing at the moment. You're going to get an immediate sort of reaction to that. But we as a channel have multiple talent across the channel, and therefore it's more the brand of Copper90 and the way that the talent support that, and we support them in return. So we're never going to get buy a Hyundai and then suddenly every Hyundai in the UK has just been sold out by, you know, to our fans. That probably won't happen. So you're always walking the line, and the brands that allow you or that let go and allow you to kind of be who you need to be with your audience are the ones that are going to win out. And it's a very different model, as Jim sort of recognises there. It's a very different model to that kind of TV, high impact, high return, high immediate kind of noticeability of what you're doing. It's a far more sort of long integrated process. But with that length of time, with that proper integration, it becomes authentic. It feels like it's got integrity, and it feels like it's a proper change away from kind of how things have been done over the last 30 or 40 years.
Right. And Joy, does that sound like the sort of approach that you have to consider when you're doing stuff for SBTV?
Yeah, definitely, because In particular with SBTV, what's interesting is they have done very few brand partnerships. Obviously, we've got the kind of thing where we've got Jamal and SBTV, so there's a kind of confusion sometimes with brands in terms of who they actually want the partnership with, but ultimately SBTV has got the reach and the demographic that a lot of brands are wanting to work with. And we've done very few brand partnerships, but I think Tom's point about letting go is really key. The most successful kind of conversations we've had with brands recently are where they completely trust us to know our audience and our channel. An example is we were approached by Anthony Nolan because they were looking to recruit a very young male Afro-Caribbean audience to the register, and they had a video that they wanted us to kind of host within our YouTube environment. And although it featured Wretch, who's obviously someone that resonates with our audience, we knew that the video was just not going to work. It wasn't going to get traction, and Jamal was very instinctive about that, and he knew instinctively the right artist to tell the story. And Anthony Nolan were very brave as a charity to let us tell the story the way in which we needed to. And they've had the biggest amount of registrations they've ever had from that community as a result of it. But it took a lot of trust because we were a channel that they'd never worked with. It was a way they'd never worked with in before. And it was kind of really revealing for them exactly how you can be working with these kind of channels. But I think letting go is the key thing. Ultimately, you guys know your audience the best. You know what they want, you know what resonates with them. And that's the most successful kind of partnership you're going to get.
Right. And in some of the earlier sessions today, there were a bunch of telco CEOs talking about responding to their customers and really wanting to try and answer almost every particular question that's posted to them. It'd be interesting to know how you handle that and what sort of volume of requests you have to actually answer every day.
Oh, there's loads, because you've got different platforms, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter and everything. I just try and reply to as many as I can and try to, I don't know, like kind of build a relation. I think since I've done it, I've always wanted to keep a relationship going between the viewers and myself, and to just always listen to what they want to see, because I think because I always try and come up with new ideas, but it can get quite difficult. But the main thing is, well, it's a bit of a mix between what you want to do and what they want to see. So if you can meet the two, that's always useful. But yeah, I just try to reply to any questions that they have and everything, but it can get quite difficult.
And sort of how many do you try and reply to?
Well, a usual video will get hundreds of comments, and then when it's up for quite a while, there's more and more, and it's difficult because then you're uploading weekly and everything. And then on Instagram, it can be hundreds as well, like on one picture a day. So yeah.
Okay. And how about you?
Yeah, it's nearly impossible to reach them all. I think I try to have like an open dialogue on my videos. So I have two channels. My main channel's where I'll sit there, usually have the tripod on lock, and it was very much like you saw there, me to camera. And then my second channel is what's called daily vlogs. So it's basically just me with the camera throughout my day, going, here I am doing this. So that's kind of much more immediate. So I try to have just a constant dialogue with my audience in both ways, and on Twitter and everything. If I refresh my Twitter feed at any one point, there's always hundreds of new things because my audience are awake 24/7. They're across the world. So you can't possibly reply to everything. I'm only one guy and it is literally impossible. But I try to kind of maintain as much dialogue as I can with them, via videos and other social media stuff.
And a slightly different question, but when did you decide that you were going to do this, and did it start out as a hobby and then turn into a job?
Yeah, definitely.
And what was that tipping point for you?
I started doing it when I was at uni because I had a lot of free time, and I just stumbled across the whole community and loved it, so I just thought I wanted to be involved. And it just really took over. It takes over everything, because once you're vlogging as well, like Jim said, it's not just videos about beauty and things, it's your day-to-day life and everything. But I think after doing it for about a year or so, I started to think, oh, I can actually do this as a thing. Because at the end of my uni course, I didn't really feel like I wasn't driven in any sort of direction from that course. And I just loved how instant it is on YouTube with the reply from people, and there's feedback, and just people are really positive. So just carried on.
Cool. And how about you, Jim?
I still struggle now with kind of the concept of it being my full-time job. I studied psychology at university and then graduated and then realised that actually I hated psychology. And I lived in Norwich as well, and there wasn't any jobs in Norwich to do with psychology. So I was working in retail and insurance, and I was saying earlier that at one point I was the guy who sent the bailiffs after people for the magistrates' court, and I was just having a pretty miserable time, to be fair. My girlfriend, Tanya Bird, I don't know if you know who she is, she's a YouTuber too, she was making videos, and it was long before we knew it could be a job, there was any money or anything, and she was just enjoying the creativity of it, and I've always been quite a creative person, so suddenly having to do a 9 to 5 and basically send people off to take things from people was not a fun job for me. So she said, make videos, to be creative, use your time to just kind of think about fun stuff. And I did, and it's slowly started to grow. It took a long time. And then one day, I got enough money from my videos to pay my rent to my mum. To be fair, it wasn't much money. But I went, that's it, I quit. Even if I have to live with my mum for the rest of the time, I quit my job and I was like, this is it. And I've been lucky because it's grown and grown and grown. And yeah, even now I still think, is this my job? Is this what I do? Because it's incredible, but it's just a new thing. No one really does it, so it's so weird to say. People go, what do you do? I'm like, I make videos online. They're like, so what, porn? How'd you do this? I'm like, it's really hard. People walk in my bedroom and they see cameras set up and they just go, what have you been up to?
Right.
It's such an unusual, and we're kind of pioneers in a way, so it's very exciting. But if you have a disposition like me, it's also nerve-wracking to think it's all going to explode any day now.
Right.
But so far, 4 years later, it's still getting better and better.
Still good. And Tom, do you think that there are rules then that mean that either video websites or vloggers have a particular quality to them, which means that they get to that kind of crucial 1 million mark and therefore are really interesting to brands?
I think yes and no. I don't think it's sort of hard rules, but it's just that connection and that honesty and the integrity that these guys were talking about. I mean, I think that the way, I was saying this to Jim before we came in, the word vlogger, I think can be used to be a bit of a kind of reductive, there's these funny guys that do this YouTube thing and we don't really have to worry about them too much. The influence, the talent that these guys have and that dominates this world is a talent that TV, for example, sought to filter out. And again, just using an example, we found a brilliant guy who was 20 at the time, called Ellie Menjum, who fronts one of the series on Copper90 and has done for the last 2 years. And Ellie would never get a job on TV presenting sport coverage or football coverage. Reason, he hasn't got any England caps, he's never played in the Premiership, he doesn't wear a suit, looks crap in a shiny floor studio, is not that interested in the game itself, is more interested in the community and the fandom. We always say that kind of our cameras are pointed at the crowd while everyone's pointed at all the TV cameras are pointed at the game itself. But what Ellie has got is just this ridiculous, infectious energy around being part of the football fan culture and community. And so he won this competition with us. We got him to present our Confederations Cup coverage in 2013. He sort of burst onto our channel and burst into the consciousness of all of our fans. And then ever since then, we gave him a series called Derby Days, where he flies around the world, going to all the big kind of contentious derbies in the world. And then he just before this World Cup, the 2014 World Cup, we said to him, what do you want to do for your show for the World Cup? And he was like, I know what I'm doing. I'm going to hitchhike there using the power of football. And it was like, Christ, Ellie, how's that going to work? He goes, well, there's a flight from Norway to New York, so I'm going to hitchhike across Northern Europe, and then I'm basically going to hitchhike through the US all the way down, and I want to get there in time for the first Australia game. I was like, right, okay. On the power of football, you're going to do this. Yeah, I'm just going to tweet out and just see. And, to our surprise and amazement and not surprise looking back, he got there. He got there 2 days early, which was disappointing. We kind of wanted that sort of Top Gear kind of rush, will he make it? It's like, no, Ellie's there already. It's like, oh, bollocks. And it's just because he's just, as I say, he's got this infectious enthusiasm and energy that you just can't bottle or teach or train, or he's never been, in a TV studio before. And 2 weeks before we left for the World Cup, he got an offer from SBTV, sorry, not SBTV, from the Australian sports broadcaster. It's similar to SBTV, but I can't remember what it's called. And it was like a presenting gig to follow the Socceroos through the World Cup. Sorry, it was a couple of months before. And he turned it down because he was going to hitchhike there with us, and we were going to pay him, $3,000, and they were going to pay him 30 grand and what have you. And now he's on staff, and he's kind of doing what Ellie does. And it's just the thing that you just can't teach is that infectiousness, that enthusiasm for what these guys do and this sort of generation does. No one's waiting for a broadcast career. No one's waiting for, Jim's GQ column, before he was doing all this. It's that we're just going to go out there and invent the road that we're walking on and just do it. And it's amazing that the audience connects because they can see that these guys are doing it and doing it every single day. And it takes hard work and it takes thinking about, but you just can't replace that, genuine love for what these guys are doing. If you don't have that, so if there's one rule, if you don't love what you're doing, you're not going to go anywhere on YouTube or on any digital platform, because that's the other thing. Jim is not a YouTuber. He is a personality and a talent that is connecting to people on whichever damn platform they're on, including, real life, and including, any other platform that hasn't been invented yet that will inevitably come, because that's what shines through.
And Joy, you mentioned Jamal earlier. So he established SBTV in 2006 as a teenager.
Yeah.
I mean, to your point, Tom, it's not waiting for the opportunity to come. It's about making the opportunity. I just wonder whether you wanted to say a few words about what he did.
Yeah, I mean, obviously he was given a camera for Christmas, and it's kind of, he's an exciting person to be around, because exactly what Tom said, he decided he didn't want to wait for the opportunities. He created himself, and at the time he was frustrated. A lot of the kind of people he was kind of hanging around with weren't getting the deals, weren't getting the exposure. MTV were kind of going with the identikit kind of talent, and he was frustrated that his friends, who had, in his eyes, exactly the same amount of talent as everyone that was being broadcast, weren't getting the exposure. So he decided to make that opportunity himself. He started filming his friends, he started putting them on SBTV, and his friends that he felt had talent that were being turned down by every major record label included Ed Sheeran, Rita Ora, Jessie J. And these guys, he was like, no, you've got talent, you have got talent, you are going to make it, you are going to get the deals. And he kept putting their stuff up. And eventually the label started listening, and yeah, I mean, we've got tracks up there from Ed from when he was unsigned and no one was looking at him. So he's got an incredible eye for talent, but that eye for talent comes from an absolute passion for music. And again, it's like what Tom's saying, you can't achieve the success that these guys have got without, this absolute dedication, this absolute belief in what you're doing. And Jamal in particular, he champions a self-belief kind of thing that he's got where he has because he saw an opportunity and he worked bloody hard. And he still works bloody hard, but that's why SBTV is where it is today.
Right. And I guess what comes across actually is that, I think you mentioned it, Sammy, is that you've sort of learnt stuff and changed, and you said the same, Jim. If you look back at your sort of first vlogs, how do you feel about them?
I deleted mine. That's how I feel about them.
Okay.
I was awful. Like, I was really, what we were just saying, like, people, the reason people watch this, for every one of me, there's been thousands of people who have tried to make videos and haven't had the success. It's impossible to quantify what it is about us that connects with our audience. But for some reason, even back in the day, they seem to see something which I certainly didn't see. So I'm just kind of really shy and nervous. I was a really shy person before doing this, and actually doing this job has taught me a lot. I can now just talk to people, which is something that's kind of underestimated, but it's quite tricky to do, just to be kind of thrown in a room and start chatting to people. But I've got better at human interaction. And it's been, my content has changed so much. It started off very much kind of fashion-based, because obviously I had my girlfriend to go on and she was doing makeup tutorials. And I thought that was what all YouTube was. And then it kind of grew into much more personality stuff because I realised that's what people wanted to see. They like me being a moron on the internet. And it's almost kind of done a full circle in that now I'm working, I write for magazines, I'm GQ's Best Dressed of the Year, I'm now starting to do more fashion-based content as well on my channel just because I like it. And when you kind of reach that stage, there's so much stuff you can do, you know, with an audience that size, is you can really kind of just produce whatever makes me happy and whatever they want to see. So there's a lot of potential.
Okay.
Yeah.
How about you, Sammy, when you look back?
It's very similar actually, because I've always kind of been a shy person, but it really has taught me a lot as well, and I've had to do a lot more kind of different types of social things and everything. So I think a lot of my viewers have watched me for years as well, so they've seen my change in confidence as well. I don't know what attracted them to me in the beginning. I was really, really awkward. I deleted my first video as well. But yeah, it's just really cool to have the freedom to be creative. And I think people like seeing you take chances as well with your channel and like exploring different, I don't know, also you get different types of audience as well when you try new things with your channel.
Yeah.
Like I've switched a little bit more onto fashion. At the beginning I was more beauty, but at the moment I love both, but I do have a real love for style and fashion, and people really like those videos, so it's just interesting that, I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
And actually, just as sort of context to that, can we just show the Zoella? I think this is virtually one of her first.
Hi, peoples. I went to Primark with my mum on Saturday, and I twittered about it when I came home, and everyone was like, I think you should do a video and show what you got, and I got quite a lot. So I'm going to show you, because it's exciting. I will start with accessories first. I got this necklace. Can you see it?
Pretty radically different from the one that you saw at the beginning of the session. And I mean, I guess there's two things happening there. One is you know, collectively all learning your craft, and also literally growing up on screen in front of us, you know, and the two things are there at the same time. Mm-hmm. And that, I wonder if that actually builds a different sort of relationship with your audiences, because they're there with you basically along the way.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of people who weren't there, because back then she would have had, you know, 100 subscribers or something, and now she's on 8 million. So a lot of people have come across her since then. But, you know, even if they watch her 2 months ago, they'll still see kind of development and growth in her, you know. And I think you know, Zoe's one of my best friends, and even looking at that, I didn't even know her then. I can still see a lot of her in that, you know. She's a lot more West Country there, wasn't she?
Yes.
That's changed. But she's, yeah, I think all of us, if you look at pick one YouTuber and watch their first videos, and it's always horrendous. But that's kind of how you start, you know. What's good about us doing it then is that no one was really on YouTube back then. That's 4 or 5 years ago, and it's such a smaller website that less people saw it. Now for newbies who are doing it, it's kind of a tougher crowd, because they expect content of the level that we're at now, which is something we've learnt to do. And then some newbie comes along and goes, hello, I'm making a video, and then suddenly no one's going to watch it because it's going to be like I was back 4 years ago. So you kind of have to be really exceptional now to sort of shine through, I think.
Cool. I suspect that there's probably lots of questions in the crowd, so I'm going to take questions. So Connor.
Thank you. A question for Samantha and Jim. So you guys described the way that you've almost kind of stumbled into the point at which you're running a business, and a significant business. Any other business at your size would be thinking about scaling, but obviously the value of your business is inherently just within you. I'm interested to know what's the future goal, what's the plan?
For me, I want to make my brand bigger than just YouTube. You know, I want to make sure that if and when, I don't see it happening in the near future, but if and when this all does come crashing down, I want to make sure that I have more strings to my bow. So I do a lot of Radio 1, doing some TV work coming up. I write for magazines like GQ, and I work with them quite closely. And there's a lot going on, as well as, partly because, you know, I can churn out my videos now, I can make them, and it's the best job in the world, but I'm getting better at it. I want more challenges. So I don't necessarily see it going anywhere, but I think I'm always looking for new challenges. So for my business, I kind of want to do more, but there's loads of people doing different things. Like Marcus is really into music. So he wants to sort of make more stuff. Zoe's writing her second book. So there's a lot of opportunities out there. I think you're right, but in saying that the business is us, so it would be impossible to sort of bring someone else and go, oh, hey, it's me and this person now. But it's all about the community. So, you know, a lot of my friends do this, and when we work together, the views go much bigger because they like to see us interact together. So it's not kind of out of the realm of possibility to bring in new people, but I think it's something you have to tread carefully with.
I think a big selling point as well is just your personality. So whatever you channel that into would be a good idea. I'm just launching a clothing brand as well with my boyfriend. So that's amazing to have separately from YouTube, but something that they can also, like, you know, they can have a part of me as well in a way. So yeah, definitely. I think a lot of people are thinking the same way and having more things to do.
Cool. Another question? Gentleman at the back with the glasses.
Another question also for our vloggers on the future. Jim, you said that, I think it's Ellie, that's not going to be the next Gary Lineker on Match of the Day. But for Samantha and Jim, what are your aspirations? You talked about building a brand, but you know, Samantha, for example, you pioneered new media and through YouTube. But where does the old media fit in traditionally? So is your aspiration to be the next Anne Wintour, to be the next global head of Vogue? Is that something you aspire to? Or is that something, no, that's passé and old, we're much bigger than that? I'm just wondering, as you both grow, where your aspirations come to?
It's kind of difficult to answer because it's such a new thing. You don't know where it's going to go. I mean, when I was in uni as well, I always wanted to work in a massive magazine like Vogue or something like that. So I'd love to work with them as well, but I don't know.
It's tough. People always say, so what's next for you? And I'm like, well, I don't need a next. This is the future of how people consume their media now. People watch a lot more online. I want a next because I'm always open for new challenges. So I'm doing a lot of mainstream. And it's because I want to do it. There's a lot of YouTubers out there who refuse to, and they don't see any value in it whatsoever, which I think is a bit short-sighted. So I want to do more. But I definitely feel like I'm in the right place at the right time doing what I'm doing. It's more just kind of a personal drive that makes me want to do more. I like hosting and presenting. So, you know, I do a lot of that sort of stuff, like live. I did hosted a premiere recently in Leicester Square. Or doing TV stuff on radio. I see potential in it, you know, and I think actually I can take a lot to that audience. I know when I do my Radio 1 show, there's a lot of people from the internet who don't necessarily listen to the radio much come along and listen. So I think we definitely have value for mainstream media, and I think it's finding the right fit. There's been a lot of shows and things that have come my way, and there's been nothing that's really been right yet because the thing with what I do is that it's so not produced. It's me just talking, and you get kind of the rawness. With TV, it's much more, it's overproduced, if anything. So it's much harder. Radio is kind of a really happy medium because I can just chat, but they just can't see me. So, yeah.
I think the more interesting part of that question is not what these guys are going to do next, but what mainstream media is going to do about the fact that this change, this disruption is here for good. And the point that I made about kind of Ellie not being on Match of the Day is that our audience think Match of the Day is their parents' media. I don't know what the average age of a Match of the Day viewer is. I think Sky Sports subscribers around 47, 48. ITV Sport is around 52. You know, our Copper 90 viewer and fan is around the age of 19 to 22 is the real sort of hotspot. They just are not there on Gillette Soccer Saturday or Match of the Day or what have you.
Do you think then, Tom? Sorry, I was going to say, do you think then that this is a medium then that's mainly for young people?
I think it's just new. People are growing into it. Like when I first started, my audience were mostly 13 to 16. Now my majority is 18 to 24. So in the space of time I've been doing it, the same people just growing up with me. I still have new people coming on board who are young, but also people who are getting older and who are starting to buy, you know, to watch it. So my biggest chunk is 18 to 24, but there are people who are like in their 30s and 40s who come along. But I do think it's kind of a generational thing. If you're people who are born with Wi-Fi, you know, I remember dial-up and stuff. Yeah. So I'm too old for this. But people who are kind of, you know, who are just native to it, understand it, and there's the beauty of it is they can consume media so quickly, and if they don't want to see my video, they'll just click off it and go somewhere else in seconds. They don't have to wait for the next show or flip channel or search things. They can just, off they go to something more interesting for them,
Okay. I'm conscious of time, but I'm sure there's another question. So, yeah, Mark?
Where there are winners, there are, of course, often losers. You guys are parking your tanks on the traditional broadcasters' lawns. Jim, you've inherited the title of pop culture and men's fashion icon from Alan Partridge. Also from Norwich, of course, that's where he knows me. Are you worried that someone like Alan with traditional broadcasting skills could come on in with a camera and suddenly take over the world again?
There's always going to be new talent, of course. There's definitely a shelf life on any of us. I think that there's not been many cases of traditional celebrities going on to YouTube. Jamie Oliver's done an amazing job because he's really kind of embraced what we do, and he talks to me and he wants to know what I'm up to. I filmed a video with him recently, and he is really passionate about the space. There hasn't been many others that I can think of.
Chris Moyles did quite a horrendous job.
Yeah, there's been loads of people who have tried and haven't had that, because I think they're so used to making their media in that way and it being produced that they go online and the online audiences don't want to see that. Jamie's is great because it's just raw and it's him going, yeah, so doing this, doing that. It's much easier to watch for that audience. But that being said, if you get it right, then of course, yeah.
Well, one watch out. I hear that Alan Partridge has got a new agent and he's going to try and do for Ipswich what he did for Norwich. So just
I'll
word
be
to the
all over
wise
him.
there.
Yeah.
Just a quick question on economics. When you look at your kind of income streams coming off of this, how much of it is driven through advertising revenue? How much of it is brands paying you to get involved? And what are the other kind of sources of income around this, just so we can start to understand what the economy of it looks like?
It really kind of depends. Like if I work with a brand, I don't do a huge amount of brand work, but it depends. The way I see my views is kind of my bread and butter. That pays my bills, and that kind of is what is there month in, month out. Everything else, so brand work, and I'm bringing out some stationery products soon, and writing and all that sort of stuff is kind of an add-on. It depends on the YouTuber. Some YouTubers are much more brand ready. So my content I could easily squeeze a lot of brands in there if I chose to. But there are some people who just won't. So for example, the people who just make comedy videos, and it's much harder to kind of squeeze a brand in there without it looking ugly. So it depends on person to person.
Okay, so I think we are under pressure for time. Oh, go on then, Johnny. We'll let you ask a question.
The original concept of a football programme that essentially, as I understand it, has no football in it, or you certainly don't have any live rights. You never have any live rights to football. Just explain how you had how you thought that was going to work.
Well, we didn't have any conviction it was going to work, but we just knew we couldn't afford rights. We knew that highlights were going to get more and more expensive. I mean, look what's happened recently with the Premiership auction that's halfway through the process and gone up 70%. What we did know, back to my point about Match of the Day being their parents' media, what we did know is our audience were more interested in the stories outside of the 90, and we then sort of went on to coin a sort of the stories outside of the 90 make the 90 matter more. So if we concentrate on everything outside of that, and on fan culture and what brings football fans to kind of together and that commonality around the world, then we felt that we had a chance. And if we did it with talent that were going to resonate with the audience, if we did it with formats that felt like they were for that audience, and if we told those stories on platforms where that audience were, we would have half a chance. But in those sort of dark early days of launching the channel, back to the kind of Zoella video and these guys wanting to take down their first videos, first ones we put up for the first 6 or 7 weeks, no one's watching it, and we're a business. There's 14 people making our content, and there's 14 people making stuff that no one's watching is pretty heart-wrenching. And then you just find, a rhythm and find a connection with the audience. But what's been really interesting, and thank you for the question about rights, what's been really interesting is now a lot of rights holders are coming to us. So last week, we were and I don't believe this has ever been done before, so it was a sort of a media first, as you guys might say. We rode with the Brazil team as they toured France for their friendly last Thursday night, and then we're at the Emirates on Sunday with playing Chile. And basically we were up close and personal with the Brazil team. We were creating content throughout the day in real time on platforms like Snapchat and Viber. We've then created all of our usual formats, then dipped in and out of the week with the Brazilian team. So it was effectively one of the most famous footballing nations on earth saying, we need to come to you to connect with a young fan base because, again, the ITV showing of the game against Chile on Sunday afternoon, I don't know how many people here watched it, but I guarantee our audience wasn't watching it. So we connected the Brazilian team throughout the entire week on all of our platforms around the world. So we recently acquired our competitor in the US called Kick TV. So they were doing stuff. We have another channel on network down in Brazil, so they were doing stuff. And it was just, we were riding in the entourage through the streets of Paris behind the team, getting the interviews down at training, and just created a kind of live, always-on kind of experience, I suppose, with the Brazilian national team. And it was just mayhem and brilliant, and some of it was unpolished, and some of the stuff that will be coming out this week is highly polished. But that immediacy is what our audience craves. And that is, in a way, that's a new right. That's a new digital right that says, how do you connect with this audience and create a package that isn't anything to do with the 90 minutes? It's to do with everything else and all the fun that we witnessed of what it's like to be. I mean, it was like literally being with the Beatles or One Direction. It was just mayhem. Thousands of fans hanging off the lampposts. They come out, they get into the entourage, there's the police outriders, and there we were with sort of cameras everywhere following this experience, and it was just brilliant. So we don't need rights, but when they come to us, if we can do something really interesting with them and bring our audience on that journey with us, then that becomes really exciting.
Cool. And have you ever had to do anything using technology or otherwise to inflate your audience? Like you talk about the early days when you were creating content no one was watching. Did everything happen naturally, or did you?
Well, we certainly didn't use any sort of nefarious techniques to boost our audience. I think the problem is that if you're chasing views, if you just want a load of views, you can go and buy them, or get a load of Indonesian views or whatever the cheapest audience on planet Earth is nowadays. So we definitely didn't want to go there, because what you end up having is a load of kind of zombie views, low engagement, and it's very easy to look into the analytics and go, hold on a minute. And I've seen this before. There was a very famous soft drinks brand that was at a YouTube event last October, who proudly put up this thing saying, we've got 12 million views, and there was 5 comments underneath it. So just imagine that. Not even the people that were involved in making the film bothered to comment on their film. So we stay away from all of those nefarious black box tactics. It's short-termism. It doesn't work. What we did do in the early days is that you start collaborating with brilliant people like Jim, and that collaboration, that sharing of audience then gradually kind of builds you up. We did a lot of stuff with a FIFA YouTuber called KSI, and KSI I think has something like the 3rd or 5th most tweeted retweet in history, behind Ellen DeGeneres and Barack Obama type thing, and it was for his kind of FIFA 15 giveaway or something like that. It's nuts. But anyway, so you start collaborating with people that have influence within that audience. Brilliantly going back onto the subject of the topic, they started to advocate Copper 90, and it's the sort of playground mechanic, really. It's kind of like the cool kid in the playground said this new kid is cool, so watch their content. And luckily, when they came onto our channel, we were quite cool. So yeah.
Great. Thank you. So I think, regrettably, we have to break for lunch, so I'd just ask whether you'd put your hand together and thank our panellists. Thanks very much.